Welcome to Horizons of Thought. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the difference between acceptance and tolerance and what both of these things mean in the society in which we live. To be tolerant is to have the ability or willingness to, as it were, tolerate the existence of opinions or behavior that you dislike or that you disagree with. Acceptance is a different kind of thing. It is the ability to embrace somebody as they are, where they are, wholly. In this day and age, it is very common to hear that we should be an accepting society and not just a tolerant society. The argument being that tolerance can be a mask for hatred or dislike, and that acceptance goes further and involves loving embracing of each other. I'm going to make a counter argument for the benefits of tolerance in our society. The first is that when people talk about being accepting and accepting people and their behaviors as they are and where they are, whether they realize it or not, they're going to do one of two things if they meet enough people who are very different from them. One of the first choices they might make is they're not going to pay attention to those differences. They're not going to notice them, or they're going to make up some philosophy that says these differences aren't really real. This can create very shallow conversations and make it very difficult for people to interact with each other in meaningful ways across anything other than a very small spectrum of human interaction. The other possibility, which comes up a lot, is people will describe themselves as accepting, but they'll then create conditions under which you slowly realize that what they're accepting is that you adopt their points of view to varying degrees. And you end up in a situation where the society describes itself as accepting because it's made certain behaviors and certain opinions acceptable to itself. These are the ones they approve of. These are the ones they accept. The place might look, for instance, racially diverse, but if they can't actually deal with opinions or behaviors that involve differences in hugging distance or talking distance, differences in whether you take your turns or interrupt each other in conversations, differences in politics, they end up actually creating a society where there's the us whom we accept and the them out there that we build walls against and ignore. You can end up making echo chambers out of supposedly accepting societies because what's really accepted is a narrow subset of the human possibility. Tolerance, on the other hand, allows for a blending of lots of different people in a society. It tears down those walls to varying degrees. When you look at somebody who's really obnoxious to you, maybe they're too loud, maybe they come too close to you, maybe they have very different political opinions from you, these people you decide you can tolerate to varying degrees. And this allows you to work and trade with people who are very different from you. You don't expect them to adopt to your point of view, and you're not going to adopt to their point of view. This, oddly enough, while it may involve less of a degree of overt or obvious love, can actually create a society that's much more expansive, much more able to deal with all the diversity that exists in pluralistic societies. The notions of acceptance and tolerance abut against a very important psychological reality in human beings. We need some people in our lives who accept us as we are, where we are. We need that very strongly. This is especially important to us with our parents. If we do not get people who accept us and interact with us as we are somewhere in our society, we end up being lonely. We can end up being depressed. We end up being very unfunctional. But at the same time, and this the parents realize very quickly too, there is the other side that no one benefits from being surrounded by people who agree with everything they say. We all know about the leader that's surrounded by the yes people who basically kiss up to the leader and agree with everything the leader says and look really accepting of absolutely everything that comes out of their mouth. And the leader never grows, they never improve, and they do a terrible job of leading. This will not do. Human beings need to encounter those who aren't fully accepting of what they're doing or saying, who will challenge them in their beliefs and make them think about how they can improve themselves, be better, how they might be wrong in particular circumstances. This is one very important aspect of us. We need both these things at the same time. If you live in a society that's completely tolerant and doesn't have any acceptance of you, you can find yourself incredibly depressed and lonely. You won't think of them as people who love you at all. You'll find yourself alone. If, on the other hand, you live in a society where everybody accepts you and does not tolerate you, you will find yourself unable to grow, or you will find yourself unable to have conversations with people that are particularly meaningful because you're not addressing these issues. So I would say, when you consider what you think of tolerance versus acceptance, remember that the differences in these things harken back to different psychological needs that we have, the need to be embraced as we are, and the need to be pushed to grow. And that they harken back to different styles of organizing societies. Is your society going to be a close-knit society where people share similar views and build strong walls against those who differ from them? Or is your society going to be a more open-knit society where you have varying degrees of acceptance and tolerance floating out to people as they differ more and more from you? These are the questions that people need to ask themselves when they think about their views of this issue. And these are the questions that societies need to address carefully. But I cannot say this strongly enough. You cannot have a modern pluralistic society that functions and expect it to run entirely on the acceptance side of the spectrum, because it will not have communicative interaction between different groups and different thoughts and people in the society. And without that communicative interaction, you end up with what we're seeing a lot in the Western world, where politics are incredibly divided, where you end up having these little camps where they hear only their point of view, to the point where they often don't even understand and cannot conceive in themselves of what it is these other people are believing. These other people are stupid and evil. They don't have any points that are worth listening to. It isn't possible to actually reconcile yourself with them in any meaningful way. We should be building our own policies, and we should be ignoring these dissenting voices. And when you do things like that, it does not matter what your politics are. If you cannot engage in the messiness of tolerating people whose opinions and behavior you disagree with, you cannot improve your policies. You can't imagine all the ways your policies can fail. You can't imagine what you're missing. You can't imagine the possibility that your policies are not going to be correct. And you will end up making a very weak, very self-destructive set of policies that can cause an enormous amount of harm in your society. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Horizons of Thought. And again, I will be back in a couple of days. If you did enjoy this, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell if you want to get notifications. If you wish to support this channel, look down at the donor box, click on that link, and you can subscribe to the donor box, and I provide benefits based on the amount of the subscription. Again, I will see you in a few days.